Hey, it's Matt Pinfield. It's KLOS New and Approved. I'm really happy to welcome back to the show Wolfgang Van Halen of Mammoth WVH. Wolf, how are you, man? It's great to see you.
I'm doing well, man. Happy to be here.
You know, I got to say that one of my favorite shows at the end of last year, literally, I mean, I could speak for the whole year, it was so great. I loved seeing you guys play live at the Whiskey A Go Go. That show for me was just an incredible highlight. But that must have been a great night for you as well, right? I mean, you
Yeah,
got,
man, that was a good time. That was a really good time. It was great seeing you there that night too. It
yeah,
definitely made it all the more nerve-wracking of an experience.
but I loved watching you play every instrument. It was really one of the things that was really exciting about the show. I got to talk to you about that too. Now, since we last connected, some great stuff has happened. I mean, the album has been doing amazing and it's gotten incredible reviews. And the other thing was being nominated for a Grammy, which was just such a cool thing. Tell me about when you got that news about being nominated.
Yeah, that was a pretty crazy morning. Gosh, it's just something I never could have expected from this in any way at all. Just to, I write and do all this music just kind of it's because it's what makes me happy, and to see that it resonated enough with people, and to have it be nominated for a Grammy is just kind of unbelievable to
It
me.
it was so great to see that. I got to say with distance, and I just this record itself. I mean, the album as well. It's just. I mean, there's so many great songs on it, and since we last spoke to, Epiphany's gone to number one on our countdown. Don't Back Down. It's gone to number one on our countdown. And I just love the way the record came out. I want to talk to you. Let's go back. It amazes me when I talk, the story of you actually starting to play the drums. What were you, about 15 at that period, at that time?
No, I was 9 when I started playing drums.
Oh, you started playing drums at 9 years old. That's
Yeah.
incredible. So was your uncle Alex? Was he like? Did he ever come over and or did you play for him early on, or was this something you were just
No,
doing on your own separately?
no, not at all. My dad just the only thing my dad ever taught me was just a straight up, like, he put a bunch of magazines on a table, and he's like, with this one he mimicked the hi-hat, and this one he mimicked the snare, and he's like, if you can do your kick foot in between those, that's just like a straight up, that's like the drums for Highway to Hell or something like that. And the second he saw that I could do that on a table, he was like, oh man, I'm getting him a drum set. And then he got me a drum set for my birthday at 10 years old. I'd been playing an electric drum kit for a little bit, but it wasn't until he got me that first kit for my 10th birthday that I really started to dive in.
That's amazing. What was the second instrument that you learned? Because I mean, I watched you play keys. I watched you play guitar. I've seen you play drums. You
Uh,
played. I
yeah,
watched you play bass with Van Halen.
guitar was my second instrument. It was just maybe, I think, around 12 years old. I just started to, one of my friends at school, we were all into the same music, and then he discovered tabs, and he taught me, like, or he showed me tabs, and so I could learn how to play, like System of a Down songs and stuff. And from there, I just kind of learned, taught myself from learning tabs and just listening to music and stuff. Everybody assumes, dad taught me how to do everything, but no, the only thing he ever taught me was that little drum thing.
Yeah, I mean, well, you were obviously driven to learn yourself, and listening to something like System of a Down and bands like at that period of time. So, how was it? Was it hard to master a song like that? To play something that Darren played or
No,
Shabo
I
and those
found that
guys
when I
back
had
then?
like the tabs in front of me, as long as I could see what it was, I could figure it out. And sometimes just listening, things just came easy. Sometimes, my girlfriend sometimes gets mad at me whenever, like, I hear, like, we're watching a TV show, and some sort of melody sticks in my head, and I grab my guitar and figure it out and really quick, and she looks at me and goes, like, that's not normal, right?
Yeah, but
And
actually, it is. It is for a guy who loves rock and roll, loves music like
exactly,
you
and that's
do.
what I try to say. It's like, yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's just how my ears work.
That's great. And so the other thing that you ended up picking up, obviously, was the keyboards. So tell me about like that. What's the session with keyboards and bass? Were they shortly thereafter, or did you wait a little while to pick
Bass
things up?
came right around when I was 14, when I started just playing around with my uncle and my dad. And then keys was always just kind of a thing that I barely knew, and I'd argue still barely know how to play. Um, I only know how to play just certain things. I wish I was way better at keyboards, but those definitely followed shortly from guitar.
It's amazing. Now, I think back about when I went to see you when you started playing with Van Halen, and I was at the Madison Square Garden show, which was early in that first tour you did. Was that a bit nerve wracking at all, or because it's first time going out and playing, or was it something that you kind of really fell into? How did that feel for you at that time, Wolf?
I think the first few shows, just kind of like any tour, honestly, you're really nervous beforehand, but then you sort of fall into it. For me, it was such a crazy thing to be doing, but I just relied on the practice and rehearsal that we had done so much, because between Dad, Al, and I, between any tour or before any tour, we'd play for months until we were just bored, and it was a part of our bones. So basically, instead of freaking out, I could always just sort of zen out and go into the playing,
which is really cool. And I know that when you went out with Tremonti, you had to learn a ton of songs pretty quickly, right? Tell me about that.
Yeah, that was a funny thing. I was hanging out in Jersey with my friends at Seven Dust while they were recording Blackout the Sun, and I got a call from Mark Tremonti that they didn't have a bass player, and heard that I was in Jersey and they were in New York, and asked if, like, hey, do you want to come on tour? And I hung up and I called my dad and I was like, hey, Pop, is it cool if I do this? He said, F yeah, like, go do it. It'll be a good time. And so I did. I hopped into a friend's pickup truck, loaded all my stuff in the back, and then I think I showed up at their practice space in New York at like midnight, and we played through the whole set. I had listened to the album, but I didn't know how to play any of it. So Mark just sat there and taught me every bit, and I did the best I could. And that's how that happened.
I love that. I mean, I think it's really great that you pick up things quickly, which I think is, I mean, that's an amazing thing. But again, you also have that incredible talent to be able to write. One of my favorite songs that you've written so far, of course, is the latest single, Epiphany. I love that song. I love the lyrics to that song, the melody. And I think that it's one of those things that you play for people and you go, I want to show you the diversity of Wolfgang Van Halen and show him just really, I mean, the things that he can do. And so many people really react to that song. Can you talk to me about writing that song lyrically and just like about when you came up with that?
Yeah, it's a funny thing. The reason it's called Epiphany is that was the demo title, because I sort of came up with the melody and the just the bulk of the idea while I was cleaning in my kitchen. And normally whenever I have an idea like that, I just kind of record it in my phone or hum something or play a little guitar thing into it. But that one I felt so strongly about it that I went right up to my computer and did a little demo. And it was pretty similar to what the song ended up being. That's why the title stayed that way. But yeah, that was always one of the songs that, like, Epiphany was always one of the songs that were, out of all the songs we had done for the album, it was like, I love all these songs, but there's something special about that one. And I'm really happy to see how it's resonated with everybody else in terms of the entire album. Like, when you see all the data, the most listened to songs since the album released, it's been that song. And that's really great to notice because it's nice to see that we were all kind of right as like this is the most special song in the bunch, if you will.
Yeah, it's a great track, and again, everybody that hears it goes, wow, that's they hear that when you listen to the different songs on the record. I mean, you really hear your diversity. Again, you and I've had this conversation, but I love the fact that, obviously Dave Grohl's been a big influence on you. And the first Foo Fighters album, and then was done where Dave played all the instruments except for guitar in one song. It was Greg Dewey from the Afghan Wigs. Just he probably happened to be there that day in those 5 days he recorded. And then you've got Prince, who used to do that. I mean, he had an incredible band. It's it's funny because I've talked to Des Dickerson, his original guitar player that was up with him through 1999, and he was like, yeah, Prince would, those guys were like best friends, but it was one of those things where he went in and did all that stuff on his own. You obviously totally looked up to guys like Prince and to Dave Grohl.
Oh, for sure.
That was kind of what you were looking for at the time. Did you find that it was because also it was a good way for you to work, and that is it the way you like to create, so you can do that?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's really it has nothing to do with like not wanting anybody else in a part of the process. It's just that I for something that's so close, I want to be able to play everything. Like it's a fun opportunity to be able to do everything. Like I don't have a band where I'm a drummer, and I love drums is my favorite thing to do. So being able to have a thing where I can do that is really fun for me.
You also, and you have a great live band, so I love the way that you've been able to transition, because that, is one of those things that's had to be so important to you when you were playing live, is making sure you got guys that can really recreate what's in your mind, that vision. And I mean, you nailed that, because the band is great, man. The band just crushes it live.
Yeah, they kick ass. I'm so happy to have a band that I can be 100% confident in, that no matter what I do in the studio, that they can pull off perfectly. They're all so great.
They really are. Talk to me about that Guns N' Roses tour too, because we haven't had a chance to talk completely about that on the air here. And I know that it was great. I know one of the really great moments was you getting up and doing Paradise City with the band was something that you love doing. But give me a little background on on that tour, and just it had to be really special. Can you tell us about a couple of the moments on the road there?
Yeah, man, that certainly was the cherry on top, if you will. I mean, just being a part of it was already such an unbelievable thing. It was such an incredible experience, but then going out and at the last two shows and playing Paradise City with the band was just ridiculous, and so kind of them to invite me on to do that. And I think it really was just a symbol of the whole experience, is that they were just incredible. They were so kind to us, and very welcoming. And the great thing is that the crowds seem to enjoy us as well. I mean, on the very first show, I'll never forget, in Hershey, Pennsylvania, it was already like 80 to 90% capacity by the time we went on, which was an insane first show for the tour.
Yeah. And then you were like, wow, these people are really reacting.
Yeah, and that's funny thing. After the first couple shows, like some of the Guns management came to us and be like, "Hey, man, this is going really well. Like, we've had some opening bands where it just kind of, they basically were like, we have a tough crowd when it comes to opening bands, and you guys are doing really well. So we just want to let you know the band's really happy." So that was an amazing feeling too.
That's great. Now, everybody that saw you on that tour, I mean, the reviews came back. The shows were so good, and that was always reassuring to hear that. I love it. Let's go back to talking about System of a Down, things like that. What were some of those when you first started getting into music? Obviously, people always ask you about Van Halen and your dad, but let's talk about some of the other. What were some of these records, defining records for you, Wolf? Like and when you look back, like if you had to name a handful of them, talk to me about them, and you can even go through like how old you were when you.
No, for sure. I think a lot of elitists have already really shrugged and rolled their eyes whenever I bring this up. But a huge band for me, at least growing up, in terms of what I enjoy for music, was Blink-182. I loved the way that they did harmonies with the vocals, and then also Travis Barker was one of my biggest, first honest drum influences I found on my own.
Yeah,
and then from there. Tool was the bigger band that really influenced me. I couldn't I couldn't count or figure out how the songs were being played, but I did my best to mimic everything I heard Danny Carey do, and I think that made me a better drummer for it. That's
great. Yeah, Tool are one of those incredible live bands, and plus, I've always loved their unorthodox way of setting up on stage.
Oh yeah, it's really great to see.
They're so great. I mean, yeah, it's funny.
Their whole setup is awesome. I mean, the first show got in when I saw them in October for the Fear Inoculum tour. It's like they started the first song and the stage was covered. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean they're always trying to challenge the audience. That's definitely Maynard and the band is. I mean all of those guys, Adam.
Yeah, and I love how Maynard gets to like stand in the corner by him. He has like his own little pedestal. It's fun.
It's a really funny story. I'll tell you quickly that one time, he and I have been friends from the very beginning of Tool. Pretty much to the very beginning when he first reached out to me a long time ago. And introduced himself to me. We started a long years of friendship, and I was with my girlfriend at the time in New York, trying to get to the New Jersey show, which was the Meadowlands. And he's like, "Hey man," he's texting me, "You here yet, man?" I'm like, "I'm almost there." And I remember saying to my girlfriend, "I'm like, well, look, you're a teacher. If you have to leave early, I understand because you got to get up." But and then I get there, and Maynard literally had given me tickets in the second row, right in his sight line. So in other words, he was behind Danny Carey, but he was looking right at me. I looked at her and went, "We're not leaving early. We're not leaving. I'm not cutting out early on my friend's show."
That's amazing.
It was so, and he texted me the second he got off stage too. So it was really funny. But they're such a great band. But I love that you love all those bands throughout the years. And did you find yourself also going back to some older stuff from the 60s or 70s, things that you?
Not too much. I mean, honestly, my favorite band when it came to like quote unquote classic rock was like AC/DC, other than Van Halen.
Yeah.
Van Halen was already, I was always around it. So just through just being around it, it was an influence. But AC/DC was that band for me that was the biggest influence in terms of, a quote unquote classic rock band that wasn't Van Halen.
Man, I'd love to see you go out with them sometime when they finally come back. Because I know Angus is dying. He was on the show here. He's really dying to come back and get back on the road.
That would be absolutely insane.
It'd be incredible. Hey, so talk to me. I was getting so excited, and I'm so glad you're still doing the Los Angeles show at the Wiltern, because I'm so pumped about being there with you again. I know that some of it because of the current strain and COVID, some of the shows had to be postponed, but I'm glad you and Dirty Honey are keeping that show happening. So it's pushed back now. It's going to be a little later on at this point,
basically it was sort of a leapfrogging sort of thing. We like took the first half of the tour and put it at the end, and unfortunately we lost one show, which is a bummer. But we got to add a couple more and honor every other ticket except for I believe it was Portland, Maine, I think was the one show we missed. So we'll have to go back there at some point.
I love the fact that it's you and Dirty Honey. So it's two LA bands. It's like cool. You guys are both an early part of your career. So talk to me about that kind of thing, because there's some really cool music in Los Angeles, where you're from, and tell me about your friendship with those guys.
Yeah, no, I feel like the tour is such a great thing because it's just these two young LA bands looking to prove ourselves in a medium that I think people are a bit tired of when it comes to like rock, at least in the bigger space of popular music. I think rock is very much an older, an older person's game, at least in terms of what is long lasting. You think Foo Fighters is probably the one of the few bands that really is like, the younger rockers, and they're not so much anymore in comparison to everything else. So it's really fun to see these new bands sort of come out, and we're these two young bands ready to kind of come out and prove ourselves that rock isn't dead, so to speak, as some people like to say.
Yeah, well, that's true. Absolutely. There's some great new rock. It's just people might have to look a little harder for it, but it's there. There's always, you know what I mean? And that's always find it. One of the beautiful things about the show, I gotta tell you, at the Whiskey, like I said, I was very honored to bring you on stage that night, was the beauty of seeing you do the song, and see your mom. Your mom was there, and I could see there was this beautiful moment, from where I had a sight line to see your mom's pride in you during that whole show. Was, to me, I'm a father, right? So I thought that was one of the most beautiful things I'd seen. I just I loved seeing the look on your mom's face. It was, and just her watching you was really amazing. Let's talk to me about what your mom says to you after she sees you play live. I mean, what is that?
Oh yeah, she's the most proud mom any mom could be. She's it's over the top. She's a very proud mom, and I'm happy to have her supporting me always.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the other thing that was amazing was after you did your last song, which was incredible. When you looked up and you pointed up to the sky, and I knew you were referring to your dad. It was just a beautiful thing. That moment. I know it touched me. I'm sure it touched a lot of people in the audience. But I know you think about him. I'm sure every night that you go out and perform. But he's with you. You know what I mean? He's with you here. He's with you, in every way, which I think is cool.
Absolutely.
So after this tour, can I talk to you? Is there some more stuff recorded that you, or are you working on new songs? Are you pretty much regularly doing that kind of thing, Wolf, where we're working on new tracks?
Yeah, I'm always writing. It's not something you can really stop. It kind of comes to you in waves, or whenever. So but when it came to the sessions for the first album, there were a handful of songs that didn't make it, not because they weren't good enough, but just because I didn't want to put out a 30-song album for the debut album. So there's definitely some ideas ready to go, but since the release, there's a bunch of new ideas that I think are really exciting and I want to explore. So as soon as we're able to get in the studio, I'm really looking forward to that.
Now you work with producer Elvis Basquet, and I know that he did really such a great job working with you. Do you think you'll return to work with him again?
Oh, absolutely. As far as I'm concerned, him and his engineer, Jeff Mall, are the other half of Mammoth in the studio.
Yeah, that's incredible. Man, I got to tell you, Wolf, it's so good to see you, man. I want you to know. I tell you, I love that album, man. I mean, it's truly one of, if not the albums of the year. I mean, it's so good.
Thank you so much.
I just want to congratulate you on coming out swinging like you did in such a big way. And I suggest that anybody gets a chance to see you live is going to be as knocked out as I was. I absolutely loved it. And I will continue to return to see you and support in a big way. But I want to thank you for taking
every show that's near you. You just let me know.
Okay, yeah, I appreciate it. Wolf, it was so great to see you. Thank you so much for doing this today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, man.
Wolfgang Van Halen from Mammoth WVH. Right here on KLOS New and Approved. I'm Matt Pinfield. Thanks for watching. See you soon.